Next application is going to be Stirlingside Urban Renewal LLC, D-2017-22, site plan use, floor area ratio, height, parking, and bulk variance application for the construction of a multifamily residential building located at 15 Nelson Street, Block 121, lots 1.01 and 1.02, zoning district R6, Lower George Street, redevelopment area, sub-area RDA-5.
Mr. Chairman, if I may interrupt,
Sure.
if the record could just reflect that the time is 7:32 that this case was called.
Okay.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Chairman and board members. My name is John Stickney. I'm with Needs Plaza Law. I'm here on behalf of the applicant, Stirlingside Urban Renewal LLC. The application is ZB 2017-22. Stirlingside is actually a wholly owned subsidiary of the community builders. They're they're a regional nonprofit real estate development company that actually have probably a couple decades in this particular community, building and developing affordable housing and housing that serves the community. This particular project, as has been described already, is an application for preliminary and final site plan approval for the development of a multi-story, multi-family residential building. This building is going to consist of 4 stories of housing over ground level parking. The development is going to be comprised of 53 residential units. Those units are comprised of 9 one-bedroom units, 30 two-bedroom units, and 14 three-bedroom units. And all of these units are available and restricted only to affordable housing. The parking amenities we're going to discuss in a little more detail herein, but as stated before, this subject property is a little over half an acre. It's approximately a full block. It's bordered by Nelson Street, Hassert Street, Yale Street, and Tabernacle Way. It's commonly known as Block 121, lots 1.01 and 1.02. A substantial portion of the site is vacant, but the portion of the site is being used as parking for the Lord Sterling Senior Housing Project, which is adjacent to this site. It's located at 40 Hassert Street, and that plot and lot is 122, lot 1.01. Now, this project is actually a combination of years of work between the applicant and the City of New Brunswick, as well as the zoning board professionals. We've been trying to craft a project that meets both the community's needs, but also addresses the community concerns. Given the somewhat limited nature of this particular site, we're requesting D variances for use, building height, and FAR. We're going to provide testimony tonight that will address both the positive criteria and the negative criteria for each of these variances, and we're also requesting relief for bulk variances. For bulk standards such as minimum lot size and area, setback, building and impervious coverage, as well as parking. I will note, as I mentioned before, Lord Sterling project was actually granted site planning board approval in June 11, 2003. Its application number was 9-2003. That approval authorized the Lord Sterling project, which was also constructed by the community builders, to provide 25 parking spaces for its residents. Again, that's senior affordable housing. So the parking standard was lowered to 25, and that was met through a combination of both on-street parking and off-street parking. It was also accommodated in large part with the site that's the subject of our application. As part of the present application, we are seeking relief from the prior Lord Sterling approval to further reduce the parking requirement from 25 to a total of 5 parking spaces. And again, we are going to provide testimony that's going to support this amendment and that approval. So with that, I have 4 or about 5 professionals available to provide testimony to support our application. Unless you have any other questions, I'd like to get started.
Yeah, just one thing. Is there any member of the board that has a conflict with this application? Saying none. Okay.
Excellent. If I can, I'd like to bring up my first witness. Actually, I'm going to ask if Karuna can come up. The representative from the applicant, her name is Karuna Nader. Karuna, can you state your name and your title?
Yeah, sure. My name is...
State your name, spell your last name.
My first name is Karuna, K-A-R-U-N-A. Last name is Mehta, M-E-H-T-A. H-T-A.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, you may proceed.
Hi, good night, hello everybody. The Community Builders is a national nonprofit housing developer that's created over 30,000 affordable homes and manages over 8,000 nationwide. While we're national, we have a deep commitment to serving the New Brunswick community and have been working in close partnership with the Housing Authority and the city since 1998, when we were selected as developer under the Hope 6 program. Since then, we've developed over 190 units locally, all of which we continue to lease and manage through our central property management offices. The 3 buildings, Hope Manor, Lord Stirling, and Riverside, are all permanently affordable, with affordability ranging from 20% of the area median income up to 60% of the area median income. We're deeply committed to our mission and the community, which is why Stirlingside will follow suit, with units reserved for families and individuals earning 50% and 60% of median income. We're also committed to working with the local continuum of care to set aside 6 units for homeless families who currently live in shelters and temporary housing facilities. We'll also be working with the Housing Authority to prioritize families that are currently on the public housing waiting list. Our experience managing these units has informed our approach to property management and specifically given us insight into how to manage building operations such as trash and security. With regards to trash, there will be accessible trash rooms on each floor. Building staff, which includes a super and a porter, will collect trash through a compactor room located on the ground floor. Similar to our current properties, we intend to contract with a private trash hauler who will pick up recycling and garbage twice a week. We believe that this is the best way to manage recycling and trash in the building, maintaining a safe and clean environment for all of our residents. With regards to security, the site will have the following features for residents: fob accessed entrance, locked package room, CCTV monitoring, and an at-grade garage with bicycle storage facilities, which will be accessed through a remote control. Finally, with regards to parking, we will develop a 46-spot covered garage for residents of both Stirlingside and Lord Stirling. As John noted, Lord Stirling currently has 25 spots, including a lot with 23 and 2 on-street parking spots. Since 2004, when the building was completed, since 2004, only 3 residents at Lord Stirling have registered their cars and can legally park in the lot. Through the new development, these residents that currently have permits will be provided with new covered parking spaces. In addition, the 2 on-street parking spots outside of Lord Stirling will continue to serve permitted Lord Stirling residents. We've experienced a similar issue with underutilized parking at our Hope Manor development, where there are 61 spots but only 29 registered cars. As 15 Nielsen Street has similar access to transit, jobs, and shopping, we expect that it will trend similarly to Hope Manor in terms of car usage. Stirlingside represents a committed 3-year effort to transform what is currently a vacant lot and an underutilized parking lot at the heart of downtown New Brunswick into homes for 53 families. Throughout this time, we've worked to address concerns regarding parking and density, including reducing the unit count drastically by about 25%. We hope that this new plan will be amenable to the neighborhood as well as the city. Thank you.
Do you have any questions for Ms. Maida?
Any member of the board have any questions? Seeing none, the next group.
I've been pronouncing her name wrong for days, anyway. I would like to bring up my next witness. He's our architect, Joaquin Pizas.
What was this?
Oh, forget it. I'm just not going to say names.
Please state your name, spell your last name.
Joaquin, Joaquin, Bouzas, Bouzas.
O-U-Z-A-S. Do you swear or affirm to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
You may proceed.
Joaquin, can you tell the board if you have any special licenses or training?
Sure, I have a Bachelor's of Architecture from New Jersey Institute of Technology. I'm a principal at Ingles Architecture and Engineering, where we practice the architecture of multifamily buildings throughout the state. And my license is current and in good standing.
Excellent. And have you appeared before any planning and zoning boards in the state of New Jersey?
Numerous throughout the states. I can name a few, but...
And you're familiar with the application and the plans?
I am, yes.
I would like to tender Mr.
Chairman, if I just may ask one question through the chair. Are you licensed in the state of New Jersey?
I am, yes.
Okay, we'll accept you as an expert.
Thank you, appreciate it. Is this okay where this is, the board, or?
Yeah, don't turn it completely to it so that if
Yes.
anyone from the
Crowd
public
can see.
wants to look at it, they have an opportunity to see it
Just
also.
a little bit more.
A little more? Sure.
There, that's good.
Okay.
And And Mr. Bozos, before you start, is it Bozos?
Boses.
Bozos. Is this a rendering that's different in any way from the packet that was submitted to the board?
No, this what I'm going to be presenting right now is all that we submitted to the board, but I do have 3 other exhibits.
Including the colorization?
Well, it was in black and white.
The submitted to the board?
Correct.
Okay, why don't we mark that as A1 then?
Sure. Today's date, right?
Please.
Okay. So this is T100. This is a title sheet, shows the location of the site. It's bound by 4 streets, Tabernacle Way, Wilson Street, Abeil, and Hazard. It takes up the whole block. Currently, the property is vacant for 2/3 of it. It's gravel, and 1/3 of it is a parking area, as noted by the attorney. We have a few variances that we're seeking tonight. We'll go through them. Planner will go through them as well. The building is 53 units. We have 9 one-bedrooms, 30 two-bedrooms, and 14 three-bedrooms. So as I noted, the site is completely bound by the streets. 2/3 is gravel, and then this is an existing paved parking area. The building we propose covers the property 100%. Ground floor parking, I'll go into the layout in a second. But for now, we would be improving the whole site, new curbs and sidewalks, ADA accessible connections on all the corners, parking entrance off of Nielsen Street, new light poles, street trees, and that's it on the site plan. The ground floor, as I noted, you come off of Nielsen Street. We are proposing 46 parking spaces at the ground floor. Trash room, we have 3 2-yard containers. This is a 305 square foot trash room that has a trash chute that's connected to all the upper floors. A transformer room for electrical with electrical meters right behind it. You enter the building off of Nielsen Street into a lobby that's approximately 500 square feet. Set of staircases, egress staircase that would bring you upstairs to the upper floors. 2 elevators to the upper floors. Package room, an office for management, water meter room, and a large fitness room as an amenity for the building. We also have approximately 15 bike spaces in the northern corner of the building. A large maintenance room for the building use, and gas meters in the far right-hand corner. We have a loading zone that's approximately 13 foot by 18 feet deep, that will provide access for residents through a rear lobby entrance into the lobby area. The second floor is a mix of 1s, 2s, and 3s. We have a large community room at this level, 1,700 square feet. This has a small kitchenette, ADA bathrooms, and a computer lab. All the units are ADA accessible, and the kitchen and bathrooms are adaptable for ADA. We have all the clearances in the hallways and entrances into the bedrooms for door swings. Closets in all bedrooms. The kitchen layout is an open plan We have a raised bar top, so the living room and the dining room and kitchen connect visually. We have HVAC unit in each unit, forced air, heating and cooling, high efficiency. And for square footages of units, the minimum square footages we have, one bedrooms at 650, the two bedrooms at 850 square feet, and three bedrooms at 1150. Bedroom sizes, approximately the smallest bedroom we have is 11 foot by 10 foot, but we have larger size bedrooms, 12.6 by 10 foot. This three bedroom, for instance, is 1,142 square feet with a walk-in closet off of the master bedroom, a full bathroom and off the master bedroom, and then another full bathroom off the unit. So that three bedroom has two full bathrooms with, again, an open kitchen area. Also on this floor, we have a large laundry room, centralized for all the building residents. The trash room is located off of the hallway as well. So somebody would come down, go into the trash room, and put the garbage down this trash chute, would go down right into the trash room, but then is taken out into the street for pickup. We have a meter room on this level as well. Janitor's closet and another storage room. Also off of the community room, we have a large outdoor terrace that's bound by landscape planters to not allow any residents access into the roof area that's inaccessible. On this floor, actually, I wanted to note this the layered gray area is the building footprint on the lower floor. As you can see, the upper floors of the residential building are all stepped in between 2 to about 8 feet, even more on this southern corner of the building. And so the building on the upper floors sets in to allow light and air to adjacent properties. This is a typical upper floor. The only difference on this floor is that the community room, you would have the green roof over the community room at this point. Otherwise, it's a typical floor with a mix of 1s, 2s, and 3s. Trash room, the two means of egress for the stairs, and the two elevators are on all floors. There's no difference to this floor, only that we don't see the green roof. The elevations, this is the Beale Street elevation. A variety of materials, articulated elevation with a lot of steps, step backs on the facade. We're proposing fiber cement panels, brick, metal cornice. On the ground floor, we have cast stone detailing for the capstone and some decorative banding along the bottom. Some railings along the roof area there. This is the Hazard Street elevation. You'll notice that the property has some sloping to it. It actually slopes northerly 10 feet from one corner to the other. And so and that's why we have that access to the parking area. So the parking area is all concealed on all sides. So as you can see, the ground floor is all covered with some window openings to allow venting of the garage. As I noted, it's all brick on the ground floor. And then you can see how the building steps back on the upper floors. This is the main facade of Nielsen. You'll notice again that grade difference with the cast stone banding along the bottom. Brick. You don't see any of the parking as well. It's all concealed. This is the parking entrance. It's a roll-up grill, and so it only provides access through fob. As you approach the gate, it rolls up automatically. These are the doors and the vents necessary for the transformer room. The main entrance, noting Stirlingside residences there. And then these would be the windows off of the fitness room. Again, you can see how we varied the height and articulated the facade to give it some design features. We took cues of the cornice from across the street from the Lord Sterling building and try to capture some of that same detailing from across the street. Tabernacle, again, it's the sloping, the banding, and the materials. Windows are proposed to be awnings and picture windows. These are interior elevations inside the courtyard. That's the roof. We have a rendering of all the facades, colored as requested by the planner. You can see the materials that we're using. We don't use many of them, just cast stone, brick, fiber cement panels, and then the metal for the cornice trim of the cornice there.
If I may, this was not submitted with the package?
No, this is
Okay, why don't we
A2.
mark that as A2?
This is a view on Nielsen. This is A3. Here again, you can see it's just a blown up perspective of the building. You can see again the stepping back of the upper floors, the community room that comes out here on that ground, on that first floor over the parking area, the landscaping that's around it in planters, the railing that comes across, the entrance for the garage, entrance for the building. And then we've made the vents and doors the same color as the brick for the transformer room, so it disappears and it doesn't stand out. Lastly, A4. We did a bird's eye aerial view showing the existing area with the building design dropped into the property. You could see the Lord Sterling building across the street. Lord Sterling building is approximately 40 feet tall. Where our building proposed is approximately between 52 to 56, again because of that grading. And so, although the Lord Sterling building is 3 stories, it has some pretty tall ceilings. And so we felt that the context was, the 5 stories was reasonable for the context that's around it. You could see the much taller 15 to 18 story buildings just 1 block away. And then lastly, we have a material board. This would be A5. showing the materials, the brick, the cast stone, the fiber cement, and the metal panels for the cornice and the like, the aluminum railings. Any questions? I'm sorry? Yes, any questions?
Any member of the board have any questions for this witness? Seeing none, your next witness, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Bowles.
You're welcome.
I think right now we're going to bring up our traffic engineer, Matt Seckler.
It's getting chilly. Please state your name, spell your last name.
My name is Matthew Seckler, that's S-E-C-K-L-E-R.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Mr. Seckler, can you describe to the board and obtaining your licensing you have?
Yes, a Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering from Union College in Schenectady, New York. I have a Master's in City and Regional Planning from Rutgers University. I'm a principal at Stonefield Engineering Design. Address is 92 Park Avenue in Rutherford, New Jersey. I'm a licensed professional engineer in the state of New Jersey and recognized professional traffic operations engineer by the Institute of Transportation Engineers, which requires both an examination and experience. I'm practicing in the field for over 15 years and been accepted in front of over 100 boards in the state.
And you're familiar with the reports and plans that are part of this application?
Yes.
I'd like to tender Mr. Seckler as a witness.
Well, accepted to the next one.
Thank you. As part of this application, we prepared a traffic assessment letter report. The most previous revision date was August 2nd, 2019. We had issued an earlier version of that way back in November of 2017. But as the project has gone over a number of changes, we've had to update our report a number of times. The most recent version is on August 2nd, 2019. As part of our traffic assessment report, we created a number of findings. I'll just briefly go through our methodology and how we came to our conclusions on this project. This project is bounded by a number of streets. It's basically a full block, bounded by Tabernacle to the north, Hassert to the south, Nielsen to the east, and Beale to the west. All those streets are one-way with the exception of Nielsen Street, which is two-way just along our frontage. And just when you get a little bit further to the north, at Tabernacle, actually, the northbound direction peels off, heads towards Route 18, and also proceeds as a one-way roadway. Nielsen Street is the main access to the site from a vehicular point of view. It is, again, two-way in front of the site and does have on-street parking and those bike lanes in both directions. I think those bike lanes are important because it shows that, and as I get further on with the parking demand, this is an area that is seen to have a multimodal form of transportation. As part of this study, we looked at the trip generation that we generated by this site. To do so, we utilized the Institute of Transportation Engineers Trip Generation Manual, which is the definitive source in our industry to generate the number of trips proposed sites would generate. It's based on engineers like myself counting the cars that go in and out of, in this case, a mid-rise residential development, determined based on how many units they have, how much traffic you would generate. For a site of this size, of 53 units, we'd expect during even the busiest hours, you generate about 20 to 25 vehicles an hour. And again, that is basically based on sites that are mixed between suburban and urban sites. Obviously, a site like this with better mass transportation in the area, better connectivity from a pedestrian realm, we may see traffic on the lower end of that. But overall, even using the more suburban rates, you'd be looking at a trip generation rate between 20 and 25 cars an hour. So a new car coming out of that site, maybe every 2 minutes, maybe every 3 minutes or so, which would not really significantly change the flow of traffic in the general roadway area. So from a roadway standpoint, we would not see there being a significant detriment from the amount of traffic being generated by this site. From a parking standpoint, we are seeking a parking variance here, so I'll go into a little bit more detail to how we came to our conclusion that the parking for this site is sufficient. The overall site has 53 units and 46 parking spaces. You previously heard testimony that included within those 46 spaces will be an allotment to the reserved permit spaces that currently are serving the Lord Sterling housing project. So obviously, there are 3 permit spaces at least that will be reserved within this lot. So for the overall residents of this building, there'll be 43 parking spaces for the 53 units. To determine what the off-site parking is in this area, again, not looking at just our site, but looking at what's available on the street, we did parking counts on the general roadway network about 500 to 650 feet around the outside of this project. That represents a little less than a 3 to 5 minute walk. Someone would park their car and walk to their apartment. We did these counts on Tuesday, May 9, 2018, and Thursday, July 9, 2019, between 10 p.m. and 11 p.m. We chose the evening hours as opposed to traffic counts we do during your rush hour time periods typically. Parking counts, we do them at the end of the day when people are generally all home for the night, and then you see your highest parking demand for residential areas like this and residential sites such as the one we're proposing. And what we did is we counted this overall area about 500 to 650 feet away and found there were actually on one of those days 45 available parking spaces overnight, and on the other day 46 parking spaces available overnight. So generally we do see a smattering of parking that's available on the streets. However, in looking at how this site is developed, we actually believe we could have sufficient parking within our site itself, but should there be a need for an overflow parking, there is available parking on the street. Looking at the site itself, your variance actually requires 105 parking spaces for this development. Your ordinance is based, or seems very similar to, the New Jersey RSIS standards, which is a statewide standard for parking. So whether you're doing this development in New Brunswick, or you're doing development in Newark or Hoboken, or doing this somewhere in Somerset County or in Burlington County, you're required to have the same amount of parking. And I think that even within the RSIS, it recognizes that there's not a one-size-fits-all parking standard. There are different sites, such as New Brunswick, where there's this urban connectivity, which may result in allowing for a lesser parking supply. And as part of that, looking at that lesser parking supply, for this site, I think there's 2 things to consider. One is the location of transit and other uses that help serve the site itself. So I prepared this exhibit. I know it's kind of far away and difficult to see, but I'll just try to explain what the general idea of this exhibit was. And I'll mark this A6. And it's titled Destinations of Interest, 50 Nielsen Street, New Brunswick, prepared by Stonefield Engineering. I'm going to put a date on it just so there's a date for the record. As 8 and what's the date? 26. 19. In general, what you see here is a star located where the proposed site is located. In addition to this star, we've located a number of transit lines. We have the bus lines, the 811, 818, 815, which all stop about a block or 2 from the site. You also have the Middlesex County, I believe it's the M5 bus, also located on this site. All of those buses have about a 1-hour headway, meaning there's a bus that comes basically every hour. In addition to that, we are showing the, I would say the main form of outward transportation for this area, which is the train station, New Brunswick train station, located about 0.6, 0.7 miles away via walking to the site. In addition, within walking distance, you have a grocery store, which you've labeled on this inset map, about 910 feet away. We've also located the library about a half-mile away. And again, this bus service that is through this area also brings you to a number of destinations, whether it's Robert Wood Johnson, St. Peter's, the shopping malls in East Brunswick. It takes you to the career center closer to Howell Lane. So there's a number of services that can be provided via mass transportation or by walking through the area. The other key piece here, and this is not to get into a zoning discussion, Mr. McDonough will speak about that later, but outlined in blue is the C4 zone, and from a traffic engineer's point of view, it's not necessarily the zone that's irrelevant here, but it's the type of uses that are found in the C4 zone. So again, besides the supermarket that's located there, you do have a large number of restaurants, you have a large number of shopping ability, you have a lot of jobs in this area. Whether it's someone can work in the court system, work for the Rutgers, work for 7-Eleven, there's a number of jobs in this area, and I think it's important when understanding how this site interacts with the overall network, that basically within a 5 to 10 minute walk, you do have a plethora of opportunities for both enjoyment and for employment. I think that's key when looking at how a site like this can support the number of parking spaces that we're suggesting. In addition, this is also, as you heard earlier, affordable housing is provided in this building, all the way down to very low income or even transitional housing for the homeless. So you're talking about people that may not have the means to own a car, so you're looking at lower car ownership rates. There's been a number of studies prepared by the Federal Highway Administration looking at parking rates and these low or very low income housing, and kind of found that there is definitely a drop in car ownership as you get to these lower levels of income. And one of the key aspects of that is being able to provide a location that has those services within walking distance or within transit distance. So overall, this is a site that has very good transit connectivity. Looking at the site itself, in terms of the census tract that we're located in, the U.S. Census has found that within the census tract, which is the general area around the site, about 31% of the renters in the area have 0 cars. So about almost a third of the residents within the census tract have 0 cars, and about 80% of them have 0 or 1 car. So you're talking about an area, not necessarily our residents, but people that are already living there now that are living with 0 or 1 cars. So we do believe that the parking ratio we're provided is definitely appropriate in this case. There's a number of studies and different methodologies that are looking at how connected this site would be to the general neighborhood network. There is a score called a walk score. It's prepared by walkscore.com. Basically, look at what type of services are within a 5-minute walk. They look at the connectivity, the availability to sidewalks, the size of blocks. People don't like walking a quarter mile in these massive, long, kind of Midwestern style blocks. They like short blocks that create a sense of place. And they found that the walk score for this location is a 92 on a 100 scale. So again, an area that is up in the upper echelon in terms of the walkability of the site. In addition to the walkability, I did mention the bike lanes at Nielsen. I think the city itself is looking to be more progressive in its use of bicycles. And we heard from our architect that there'll be 15 bike parking spaces located, covered within the garage. In addition, another score that I think is relevant here is the Center of Neighborhood Technology, which has what's considered an all-transit score. It's their methodology for determining how connected a site is, both through transit and walkability. And they found that this is a site that is rated an 8.1 out of a 10 scale. And that means it has an excellent combination of trips and jobs located within transit and accessible to the people in the area. That 92 on the walk score, I just want to state, that is defined as a walk score that allows for daily errands that do not need a car. So again, I think this is an area that, looking at these kind of national statistical numbers, whether it's the census, the all-transit score, the Center of Neighborhood Technology, there's definitely the ability for a site like this, or the residents of a site like this, to be served within the community without a car. So I do believe in looking at those type of figures, we can conclude that the parking ratio that we're providing, which is again 53 units, 46 spaces, again there are 3 of those that will be reserved for the permits that are currently being provided and served within that on-street lot that we'll be replacing as part of this development. And we do have sufficient parking to support the demand of this development.
Are there any questions for Mr. Steckler?
Any member of the board have any questions for this witness? Seeing none, your next witness.
Final witness is our planner, John McDonough.
Please state your name, spell your last name.
My name is John McDonough, MC capital D-O-N-O-U-G-H.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Proceed.
Mr. McDonough, can you describe any special licensing or training you have?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm a licensed professional planner here.
Mr. McDonough,
Yes.
if I may, you've been before this board a number of occasions,
I
correct?
have.
Since
Yes.
the last time you appeared before the board, have your credentials changed in any way?
No, they haven't. And for the record, I was here for the high-rise over at Somerset. That was one of the last ones that I was here for.
All right, we'll have to examine, sir.
Take it away.
Take it away.
Okay, so I think we'll take my testimony in 2 parts. The first thing I'd like to do is hand out some exhibits to show the physical characteristic of the property, to show the surrounding land use context. This is an infill development, so obviously neighborhood compatibility is a key part of the test. This is an application that does require a use variance, but it's really related to to the form of use, because the applicant is proposing a mid-rise multifamily building in what is a low-rise district. That's a use variance, but it's really a form of use variance. So we'll look at compatibility in terms of the form of development, and I think the photographs will help show how the two will marry up very nicely. So with that, I'll start over here. So I brought 15 copies, and there's 6 pages each, file size 11 by 17.
Marvin, did it have to be a mark?
We'll mark it collectively as A7. Mr. Hernandez?
Yes.
You just want to mark your copies A7. Extra copies?
There should be plenty of copies. I brought 15. And for the benefit of the public, I think this will all be familiar because it's your properties, it's the surrounding neighborhood. So what this,
Mr. Dennis,
sure.
Mr. Chairman, there are several extra copies that remain if you wanted members of the public that wanted to maybe view that.
Does any member of the public care to take a look at the photos? Come back.
Anybody else? You're welcome. So this is going to be a 6-page exhibit. We're going to start with the very simple. We'll work up more to the physical. First page, we've highlighted the subject property in yellow. This is a simple tax parcel map. You can see we're dealing with 2 side-by-side lots that actually are bounded by streets on all sides. There's a property that's about a ½ acre in total area. And again, we're looking at lot 121, lot 1.01, and lot 1.02. This is right next to the Lord Stirling development, which is over at lot 1.01. So the two do have some interrelationship in terms of their physical proximity. Same development entity, and there's going to be some sharing of parking as you presently heard. Second page now overlays an aerial photograph to show the physical characteristic of the property. And you can see that lot 1.01 is developed as a parking lot in connection with an approval for Lord Stirling, which has an actual demand of only 3 spaces. You can see that there's more vehicles parked here. Those are illegally parked vehicles, and what's nice about this application, reminding the board that this is a private parking lot, not a public parking lot. The applicant is going to enclose this physical space, so it will only cater to those who is intended to cater to. That said, as you've heard, there are 3 permits that are presently used. There are 3 permits with Lord Stirling that will carry over to this particular lot. The rest of the supply that the applicant is proposing, as you just heard through Matt Seckler's testimony, will meet the actual demand on the property, and that goes towards the variance there. The rest of the property is vacant land. It's an eyesore. It's certainly not adding any value or quality to the neighborhood. In fact, the city has recognized this as a problem site because it has blighted it and declared it an area in need of redevelopment. Next page shows the land use pattern in the area, and what we've done is color code the surrounding land uses based on the GIS. The gold color that you see is residential, and the red color is non-residential. This is predominantly a residential area. We have a residential use that would be coming onto this site and effectuate a nice blend with the residential that's around it. In fact, there's a multifamily residential neighborhood, so we've got nice use compatibility there as well. Fourth page shows the reason why we're here. We're zoned R6. There's actually an overlay here for a redevelopment district as well. We're not applying that because the applicant doesn't stack up with the parameters there. So again, and as noted in your planner's report, the R6 zoning is the zoning that is applied here. There are several variances that the applicant is seeking. We think they all hit the statutory criteria under the land use law, and we'll walk the board through the rationale as to why those variants are justified. Fifth page shows the physical characteristic of the property, and in frames number 1 and 2, you get a sense of the undesirable condition of the property now in its vacant condition and its blighted condition. This is a view from the site looking towards the downtown. We're looking at a property that is clear, that is flat, that is ideally suited to accommodate new development. Frame number 3 and number 4 show the parking lot condition, and what you see there is what you would pretty much see today as well. Most of the parking spaces are empty. Only 3 are actually there by virtue of parking permits, and some others have overflowed onto the site, mainly because it's there, because it's sitting there. And then finally, in frame number 6, on page number 6 rather, you get a sense of the surrounding land use context. And in frame number 5, we've got a vacant lot to the north. Frame number 6, we've got a vacant building to the west. Frame number 7, we've got multifamily to the east. And then frame number 8, we've got land use to the south, which is the Lord Sterling development. Again, this is sort of a companion development to the senior housing project that's happening over there. With that backdrop, we now take you to the variance that the applicant is seeking. And again, reminding the board, we're here in the R6 multifamily residential zoning district. Multifamily is allowed here, that's what the applicant is proposing. Just multifamily in the form of low-rise, not mid-rise. So there's interrelated relief under D4 for floor area, and interrelated relief for D6 under the height. And then several bulk variances. Again, this all relates to the mass of the development, and I'll fall back on what was presented with Joaquin's testimony at the outset under Exhibit A4. From a physical planning standpoint, I think that's the home run shot here for the board. That the box that the applicant is proposing on this particular site blends very well with the surrounding land use content, and certainly is an improvement over the physical condition of the property as it presently exists. I think if you look at A4, you can clearly see that this building is not going to stand out like a sore thumb, but is actually going to blend very well with the surrounding buildings. We, on the applicant side, were somewhat challenged trying to figure out which building was the one that the applicant is actually proposing here. It fits so nicely with that which is around it. With that said, the D1 variance, we're dealing with a special condition here. We're dealing with a project that is 100% affordable, which takes us out of that familiar Medici standard that the board would ordinarily deal with a use variance. So we're now in the more simplified SECA test, which is structured around inherently beneficial uses. And the reason why courts have done that, as this board probably knows, is whenever you're dealing with an inherently beneficial use, the positive criteria are automatically satisfied. So it's not incumbent upon the applicant to prove that there's an unmet need here, that this is satisfying some sort of location or particular suitability. All of those aspects that the board would typically deal with when we're dealing with a Medici type application goes away. So what the courts have put together is what we call an analytical shortcut, a 4-part test, a 4-prong test, a simplified test under the law. And the first prong of the test is to identify the public interest at stake. And here is pretty clear cut. Affordable housing is the public interest at stake. It goes all the way back to our case law in the 1980s with the Mount Laurel cases, and then more recently with the Homes of Hope case, which came out and found that affordable housing is inherently beneficial even after a municipality has met its need as well. So the inherently beneficial aspect continues even after a municipality may have satisfied its affordable housing obligation. Second prong of the test takes us from the positive and puts us over to the negative to identify any detrimental effects that would be associated with this development. I think the applicant has done a good job of putting the witnesses before me that would testify to the problems that may be associated with additional floor area and with additional height. That's an intensity of use question, and I'm satisfied from a planning standpoint that the application can be adequately parked, that it can adequately be served by utilities and the like, and certainly from a visual standpoint is not overdevelopment and fits very nicely within the context of the neighborhood. It's actually not going to be a substantial departure from the zone scheme to the extent that if this were built out under the redevelopment plan, it actually does call out that 4 habitable stories are allowed. This is a development that actually has 4 habitable stories. We've got 4 living levels over 1 parking level. So under the strict read of your ordinance as to what habitable is, there are 4 living spaces here, and this marries up with that policy intent under the redevelopment designation. Third part of the test throws a little bit on the board now to see if the board can mitigate any of the negative effects that may be associated with an application. We think the applicant has actually done that already in terms of mitigating some of the negative effects by scaling back this project. It actually started with an extra story and has now come down. And also by putting forth a parking management plan that the applicant has just explained with the 3 parking spaces associated with Lord Sterling, and then the remainder being adequate to accommodate the development that is proposed before you. Stormwater maintenance plans have been provided, and all of the usual planning documents have been provided to justify and mitigate reasonable conditions that may be associated with the impacts. Fourth part of the test is a simple balancing. We take a very heavy weight of an inherently beneficial use. We weigh that against the impacts, and again, we always look to see if the impacts are substantial. Every development has some form of impact on the neighborhood, but we look to see here if those impacts are overwhelming or overbearing in the context of the neighborhood. And for all of the evidence that the applicant put on the record, I believe that that test has been met as well. So that goes towards the proofs required for the D1 use variance. Interrelated are 2 D variances, a D4 variance associated with floor area and a D6 variance associated with height. In terms of the positive criteria, all of the positives that I just mentioned carry forth. The added height, the added floor area are necessary to effectuate this beneficial project and to provide for affordable housing units. These are not market rate units where an applicant would profit from them, but these are going to be affordable units, again, in the interest of meeting that public policy. All of the above are consistent with the purposes of zoning, including Purpose A, the promotion of the general welfare, Purpose M, the efficient use of land, Purpose I, the promotion of a desirable visual environment, and Purpose G, the planning goal to provide for a variety of uses in appropriate locations. On the negative side, again, I come back to A4. This is visually not going to seem out of scale with the neighborhood, and the added height, the added floor area is compatible with the surrounding context. Functionally, the massing can be adequately parked, it can be adequately screened and served by utilities, and to that extent, we believe the development will not cause any of the problems that may be associated with additional height, such as shadow effects or the blocking of views. Again, this is not going to be an overbearing project in the context of the neighborhood. Lastly, with respect to the bulk variances, we see the basis there under the C2 balancing test, whereby the benefits of the application as a whole substantially outweigh the detriments, sort of tie it all together. The applicant does need some coverage relief here, which we believe have been mitigated by virtue of the drainage improvements that the applicant is going to propose here that would accommodate and capture the additional runoff that's associated with that additional coverage. And then lastly, as we've just heard through Matt Seckler's testimony, the actual parking supply will meet the actual demand. More parking here would be wasteful, it's not needed, and in that regard, we believe the interest of efficient use of land is met as well. All said, this is going to be a very significant investment in what has been identified as a problem site in the community. The proposal is going to revitalize the site, which is exactly what the master plan wants and what the redevelopment plan wants. For this portion of Lower George Street, it is going to provide a resident population that will support those businesses along George Street, the walking wallets, if you will, again, people that will populate, patronize those businesses. And for that reason, we believe all relief can be granted without substantial detriment to the area, without substantial impairment to the intent and purpose of the zone plan. And in that regard, the statutory test is met. The applicant has met its burden with the evidence that is provided, and approval is warranted here from a planning standpoint. That ends my direct.
Any member of the board have any questions for this witness?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, if I may, just Mr. McDonough and also Ms. Neat I just want to make sure that I get all of the variances that are being requested here. So just, and we're relying on the R6 zone or we're relying on the redevelopment zone?
We run this through the R6.
Through the R6 zone?
Yes.
Okay, so,
And just to help out, I put together a statement of principal points
okay,
that I believe was distributed to the board, and on the bottom of that on page 5 is the schedule of relief with the 3 D variances and then the 4 C variances.
so I've got a D1 for the use, which is, there's a caveat to that, but it's
Yes,
in name a D1 for the use. I've got a D variance for FAR,
correct,
because the R6 zone that we're using permits 0.3, and you're proposing 3.8.
yes,
I've got a D variance for height,
correct,
correct? Okay. I've got a C variance for height for the number of stories.
correct,
I've got multiple front yard setbacks since the lot has multiple front yards.
correct,
I've got a building coverage variance in the R6.
correct,
I've got an impervious coverage variance in the R6.
yes,
I've got a parking variance,
yes,
and existing conditions for lot area and width.
got it all.
Okay, and then I also have a sign variance for a facade sign on an apartment building in the R6 zone where the zone permits 1 sign per frontage, maximum of 18 square feet. There are 2 facade signs proposed, one on Nielsen's, I'm sorry, but they're both on Nielsen Street. The total area is 38 square feet. One of them says Stirlingside residences and the other says residential parking entrance.
So one is more of an informational than an advertising. In fact, it's really both informational, not advertising per se. The Stirlingside sign is going to be an identification sign to demarcate the entryway to the building. Say it reinforces gives a little hierarchy, a little proportionality to the building.
Right, and those are metal letterings, about 25 square feet. If you were to take the total square footage of the whole area, but if you were to take the square footage of the signage itself, it would be less than 25 square feet. And this was updated to remove the new sheet with the date 7/1/2019 was updated to remove that signage at the parking entrance.
So there's no signage at the parking entrance?
We can meet that requirement of the 18.
Okay, so the only sign is the Stirlingside residences,
Correct.
and that's still 25 square feet?
But we'll comply with the 18.
Oh, okay, so that you're not seeking a parking, sign variance then? Thank you for clarifying.
No problem, thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none. Do you have any more testimony?
That concludes our testimony today.
All right. Then at this time, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I believe that the engineering comments have not yet been addressed, so if I have an engineer,
Okay.
I wish to call that engineer.
Did you want to,
The engineer.
Sufiani? Sufiani, I'm saying this right?
Sufyan. Yes.
Al-Musi.
Exactly.
Please state your name, spell your last name.
Sufyan, it's spelled S-O-U, F as in Frank, I-A-N-E, and the last name is Al-Musi, E-L,
Okay, start again. E-L.
E-L space, M-O-U, S-S-I.
Okay. Do you swear or affirm to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
May proceed.
Mr. Al-Musi, can you talk a little bit about your, any special licensing or training you may have?
I have a bachelor's in civil engineering from Portland State University, as well as I'm a professional engineer in the state of New Jersey.
Okay, you're licensed in New Jersey. Have you testified before any boards or
This is my first testimony.
are you familiar with this, with the plans in this application?
Yes.
And you're prepared to testify on engineering and boards?
Yes.
Okay. You'd like to tender Mr. Al-Musi as
Okay.
Absolutely.
How long have you been licensed here in New Jersey?
For less than a year, but I've been practicing for 5.
I will accept your confession. Do you want him to testify to the report first? Or do you want to just ask questions?
Yeah, I mean, if you could just go through, I mean, you don't need to duplicate, you know, where some of the other professionals have spoken to the items in Mr. Carley's report dated July 17th, but there's a few outstanding items. If you could just go through and maybe just go through the letter and just touch on those.
Do you want to list out some of your concerns, or?
Some of them maybe just as simple as just agreeing to address some of these items as a condition of any board action, like item 2.7 is just identifying, bringing your attention to some of the ordinances on page 2.
So we discussed most of the parking, John and Matthew discussed most of the parking issues. In regards to lighting, we have updated our lighting drawing sheets. As Joaquin had testified earlier, we've added street lights all around the property, as well as reduced our lighting count within the garage to meet the set ordinances.
So you can agree to provide
Yes.
lighting that satisfies the ordinance?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And then in terms of the stormwater management, we have provided reports that shows that the post-development computed stormwater discharge for the 210 and 100-year storm events, all extent or equal to the allowable discharge. So the updated report discusses that and shows that there will be no negative effect on the city sewer.
Yeah, I concur with that. I think there's comment number 8.6, there was a potential of back pitched grading area on the plan. Just something I think as a condition of any board action, if we just take a look at that.
Yes, and so what we have done for the grading itself is that we've changed the pitch to the garage entrance, and now as we drive in, as the grading plan shows, we're sloping up into the garage, and therefore there will be no back pitch. So we have satisfied that.
What's the date of the plans that you're working on with?
We are working off of the one submitted on July 1st, 2019.
The engineering comments, there's a revision of August 5th, 2019.
Okay, I have it July 1st, so there may be some subsequent revisions that get picked up in this review letter.
No problem.
So the pitch has changed, and we have a 2% slope with a transition of a 0.1 for ADA access, and then another 2% into the ground. I'd be more than happy to share that.
In terms of sanitary waste, you just acknowledge that it looks like you will require a TWA permit.
We will seek the TWA permit.
In terms of potable water supply, is there fire suppression for the building?
I believe so. Of course, yes.
And you've seen comment 13.9, reference from the city engineer.
Yes, and we have addressed all of the concerns.
And that's on the new set of plans.
Yes.
Yeah, as long as that can be addressed as a condition of any board action. Any member of the board have any questions for this witness? Say it up.
That concludes our testimony.
One final housekeeping matter.
Sure.
Council, your client agreed to all the conditions of both the Big Mill Planning Report and the DNR Canal Engineering Report.
Yes, we will.
All right, at this time, I would like to open it up to the public for any questions or comments.
Overall, Council.
Yeah.
Hello, good evening, my name is Nelsa Rodriguez. I'm sorry.
Please say your name, spell your last name.
Nelsa, N-I-L-S-A, Rodriguez.
L-S-A.
Yes, sir.
Rodriguez.
Common spelling with a Z,
Yeah.
dash Feeney, F as in Frank, E-E-N-E-Y.
You swear or affirm to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
You may proceed.
Hello, my name is Nelsa Rodriguez Feeney. I'm here in vehement opposition of the Gloria Legacy Z-201.
Just stop it for 1 second. Can you
Yes, sir.
just give us your address for the record as well?
Our address, at this time, my address is 27 Laurel Street, Hope Lawn, New Jersey. I just moved there because I just got married. Anything else, sir?
That's fine, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Again, my name is Nelsa Rodriguez Feeney. Thank you for giving me this time. I'm going to be short and sweet. We all have full-time jobs and we're all very tired. Again, I'm here in vehement opposition of the Gloria Legacy Z-2017-20 site plan application. My parents currently live at 209 Talmadge Street, New Brunswick, New Jersey. Yes, sir.
Which application? You're talking about this application?
Oh, no, that's why I asked it. Was it a general?
Oh, no.
Oh, okay.
No.
Okay.
That one was held. That application was.
It
No,
was
carried till-
carried, yeah.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, due to other circumstances like responsibilities, I won't be able to attend your other hearing.
Then you can wait till the total end of the meeting if you'd like to speak, but not during this.
Okay, no, I thought that it was for this. I
Okay.
just asked if it was a
Okay.
general.
Well,
We have a general public.
yeah, we have a general.
Okay.
General. to this
Okay,
day.
all right, so let's be more specific.
All
Okay,
right.
thank you. It's not, you guys are good, thanks.
That's called as a witness.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the board. Blake C. Witt, WITCH, of Lindenberg Informing Estabrook and Cooper, appearing on behalf of Objectors Middlesex Apartments LLC, located at 55 Hassard Street. We have a variety of objections to this application, and I'd like to start with sort of general concept and narrow down to the specifics which we'll address through expert and factual testimony. As a general matter, as everyone knows, this property is located within the Lower George Street redevelopment plan. And the primary objectives of that plan are to improve the quality of residential development in the area through the deconstruction of density on the site of the New Brunswick Homes public housing project, to be accomplished through the demolition of the existing high-rise housing and development of new low-rise housing on the site that's going to fill in sites throughout the area. So what we really need to focus on is the deconstruction of density, and this plan does just the opposite of that. The redevelopment plan calls for buildings not to exceed 4 stories. We're seeking, this application is seeking, proposing 5 stories. We're looking at a total of 8 different variances, including D variances. The plan still doesn't set forth what the side yard setback variances will be. It seems as if it's being pushed forward, pushed through prematurely, and it's not giving due consideration to the variety of impacts it's going to have. The proposal also calls for 100% coverage, whereas the ordinances call for 25% building coverage and less than or equal to 60% impervious surface coverage. The applicant provides for a small green space area on top of the first story of the building. Obviously, it's not impervious, but it's a false attempt to address these concerns, and it's ultimately we think it's ineffective. My client's primary objection, however, to this application is the parking issue. The plan calls for, and the applicant acknowledges, that 105 parking spaces are required. They acknowledge that they will use 3 of those covered parking spaces on the ground floor for Lord Stirling, leaving a total of 43 spaces for the residents of this new building, which is 62 spaces short. It's woefully short of the requirement. Obviously, we recognize that there may not be a one-size-fits-all plan here, but it's simply woefully short. Also, the plan doesn't acknowledge what exactly is going to happen with the 20 spots allotted for Lord Stirling that currently exist. Presumably, if there's a shared parking agreement here, it should be compliant with the local zoning ordinance 17.05.010 L3. Deals with shared parking agreements, and it states the shared parking agreement may only be revoked if all required off-street parking spaces will be provided on-site in accordance with off-street parking schedules in that section. Now, presuming that there is an agreement with Lord Stirling, the agreement would have to be revoked, and there's no testimony to indicate whether or not the Lord Stirling residents are aware of this and whether they agree with it. We acknowledge that there are only, the applicant states that there are only 3 permitted Lord Stirling sites, parking spaces rather. But in an area where parking enforcement is lax, the so-called illegal cars that are parked in the lot and seem to be always parked in the lot whenever a survey is done, there's no indication as to whether they're not Lord Stirling residents or not caretakers for the Lord Stirling residents or not. The parking lot seems to be more often than not mostly full, and the plan doesn't address how it will deal with the loss of those parking spots. In addition, the application, the traffic expert has testified that there is a 34% rate of individuals in New Brunswick who do not own cars. It's stated as 34% of residents. This doesn't address those households that may own more than one vehicle, and it's really more of an assumption than anything else. Finally, in terms of the plan, we saw that there are some offices set forth in the plan documents, and there's no provision made for the administrators or staff or janitors who are going to be using, presumably, parking spots. So there's no provision for those individuals in addition to the residents. At this time, in order to address these parking issues, I would like to call my expert, Lee Klein, to come forward. Mr. Klein, would you please take it to the record?
Please state your name, spell your last name.
Lee, middle initial D as in Daniel, Klein, K-L-E-I-N.
Mr. Klein, do you swear or affirm to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
You may proceed.
Can I ask you to review your credentials for the board?
Certainly. I'm a professional engineer in the state of New Jersey. I'm also a nationally certified professional traffic operations engineer. My license and my certification are current. I've appeared before many boards throughout New Jersey, probably over 100. Also have worked for boards throughout New Jersey. And I'm here to represent the objections and the concerns of my client.
Can I ask if you're familiar with the plans and the report of the applicant's traffic expert?
Yes, I am.
At this time, I'd ask that Mr. Klein be recognized by the board as an expert in the field of traffic.
We'll accept him as an expert in field traffic.
Thank you.
In order to prepare tonight, I looked at the Stonefield traffic and parking evaluation study, and I looked at some of the census data that was used in that study as well. And I looked at the available parking spaces that are proposed here, the the 43 spaces for the 53 units. I also did some math to figure out that there are actually 111 bedrooms associated with this building. So with the proposal of 43 parking spaces and 111 bedrooms, that's a parking ratio of 0.39 parking spaces per bedroom. And we'll have to go a little bit into some of the data that goes along with that. And then what I did is I looked at the census data. The census data was given by the expert's traffic engineer, and I also looked at the rest of the data. I looked at what percentage of households in New Brunswick own one vehicle, what percentage own two vehicles, and what percentage owns three or more. It's 43.6% own one vehicle. If you multiply that by the 53 units, that would be 23 automobiles. 19.5% own two vehicles. You multiply that by the 53 units, and that's another 21 cars. And then about 7.8% own three or more. I assume 3.5 just to do the math. So 7.8% of 53 times 3.5 vehicles per those units is 15. That's a total of 59 automobiles. And again, they've proposed 43 parking spaces, and based on the census information in New Brunswick, we're looking at potentially 59 vehicles to be parked there. And then, as was spoken of before earlier, there are 20 parking spaces on the site currently, 23 parking spaces on the site currently. 3 of them will be replaced here. The other 20, we don't know where they are. When I was out there this evening around 6 o'clock, I noticed there were 12 vehicles parked in that parking lot. So again, we're not sure who's parking there, but I'm pretty sure they're not going to be able to fit in the 43 spaces that are proposed on this site. So we need to find a place for those. Even if it's a difference of 9, we still need to find those parking spaces for those vehicles. I also looked at the Institute of Transportation Engineers parking generation to look at the various parking requirements for mid-rise apartments. There are several different areas that we can be looking at. We can be looking at a suburban location that's within a half a mile of a train or rail station. In an area like that, such as that, we're looking at per bedroom 0.61. I remember I said that the applicant is proposing 0.39. We're looking at anywhere from an average of 72 parking spaces required, or parked vehicles based on the 111 bedrooms in the overnight hours, to an 85th percentile of 95 parked vehicles. If you look at a dense multi-use urban area, also within a half a mile of a train station, again, this is about 6/10, 7/10 of a mile from a train station, we're looking at 55 parked cars on an average, or 74 at the 85th percentile. The only number that really meets it is a dense multi-urban area with no transit in the area. The parking ratio is 0.48, and it's 53 parking spaces. And again, the site is proposing 43 parking spaces, and 53 is the lowest number that I was able to find. And even again, based on the census information, we're looking at 59 parked cars. So in that range of mid to upper 50 parking spaces, we're concerned that 43 parking spaces that are available for the residents won't be enough to accommodate them. Mr. Steckler also mentioned some information from the different websites. Actually, while I was sitting in the audience, I looked up a website. I just Googled automobile ownership by low-income households. And it actually gave me some information that was quite contrary. It was a report called Governing the State and Localities, and it's from governing.com, and it was more poorer residents are driving cars, presenting new issues for transit agencies, and that was published in April 9th, 2018. And basically what it was saying is, from census information from 2006, where 22% of adults living in poverty had no access to a vehicle, that number's actually come down by 2%. It's now only 20% of adults living in poverty in 2016 that had no access to vehicles. So the trends are actually going the other way. It also said that households with incomes less than 50% of the federal poverty level, the number of no vehicle households is down. And then we looked at another article on citylab.com. And that was As the Planet Warms, Who Should Get to Drive, and that was published in February 8th of this year. It said universal car access could lift more Americans out of poverty. Policymakers help more needy people to get behind the wheel. And it's showing that, that the statistics are actually going the other direction, that people need access to a vehicle to be able to get to work. So for the information that I've proposed here, that I've provided, information about the number of parking spaces being 43, census data saying we need about 59, even the lowest of the numbers from the Institute of Transportation Engineers say we need 53, and also the 20 vehicles that are going to be, the 20 parking spaces that are being displaced, where are they going to go? Also on the site plan, because the driveway is going in a different location from the existing driveway, they're going to be losing 4 parking spaces along Nielsen Street, so there's another 4 spaces that are being dislocated and removed from the area, further taxing the parking within the neighborhood.
Any member of the board have any questions for this witness?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, just for point of clarification, Mr. Klein, you'd indicated there were 2 websites. I didn't get the names of those websites.
One was governing.com, and the other one was citylab.com.
City Lab, LAB.
LAB, yes.
And these are websites that you would routinely refer to in your field as a as a traffic engineer?
No, this was actually something I had just Googled because of some of the testimony that Mr. Secretary provided this evening.
Mr. Chairman, certainly the board can give it whatever weight, but I believe the witness is saying that they're not scholarly, or reference in the field of traffic engineering, so they would just be websites that contain words.
All right, thank you. Any member of the board have anything? No, your next witness?
Thank you. At this time, I would like to call a member of Middlesex Apartments LLC, Heather Fennick, to discuss some of the more practical parking issues that she's observed.
Just for the record, where is exactly the Middlesex Apartments LLC?
It's 55, oh, I'm sorry, 54 Hassard Street. So I have an exhibit that I'd like to distribute to, I'm sorry, please state your name for the
Please state
record.
your name, spell your last name.
Heather Fennick, F as in Frank, E-N-Y-K.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
So I am going to show you a series of photographs and ask if you recognize them.
I do. I know my glasses over there, but yes.
Please feel free to look at them.
How many photographs are there?
We have a total of
Absolutely.
7 photographs with a cover email.
So one of them marked them collectively as O1.
Very good.
I think there are 8 photographs.
Oh, I'm sorry, 8 photographs.
8 photographs.
Can you describe what these are?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I'm a longtime resident in this neighborhood. I've lived at 54 Hassard Street for 21 years now. And parking has intensified over that period of time. And I, on a random weekend, went out and took photos of the street grid and how intensely parked up the street grid was. So that's what these photos represent, is the streets that are referenced in the Stirlingside documentation, but with far more parking than they have indicated existing. So I did approximately a quarter mile walk around the area, likewise to assess parking availability, and found in some cases double, in some cases triple parking.
Earlier this evening, we heard testimony from the applicant's traffic expert who discussed their review, their physical review of the parking. And those assessments were conducted on May 9th, 2018 and July 9th, 2019, between the hours of 10 and 11 p.m. Do those dates have some significance for you?
Well, actually, the May
Counsel, if I
9th.
may.
Yeah.
I don't think you've laid a foundation for these photographs. I understand they were taken, but what are they to depict? What area are we looking at?
Yeah,
And who
so,
took them?
yeah, I took these photos. I took these of all of the areas that have been referenced in the Stirlingside application.
All right, so then on the first picture, can you tell us what street it is and then which
Sure,
direction?
I think that they're labeled, oh, the first one is not labeled. So this is actually a Beale Street looking north. So this is the Stirlingside Senior Residence, the building on the right. This is a Beale, you're from the intersection at Harmon Street looking toward Hassard. The second photo is, this is at Nielsen Street. So this is, this is Nielsen Street at the, it's a current senior housing complex looking south on Nielsen Street. The next photo is actually at the current Hope parking lot, and this is what had been referenced in the original application as overflow parking opportunity. That's why this was included. Until today, I did not realize that that was not going to be part of the package proposal, so that's why it was in there. The next page, page 4, is a photo looking on Hassard Street. So this is looking west on Hassard from Beale Street, parking there.
And it appears that there are a variety of violations.
There are consistently violations, regularly. And I have to say, personally, I don't know how many parking tickets I have received because I haven't been able to find parking close, not, close enough in, because you're supposed to give it a 20-foot distance between the intersection. So, and it's very, very hard to find that in the neighborhood. So the next photo is Nielsen Street. This is looking north on Nielsen Street from, north on Nielsen Street. So the next one, Nielsen at the current Hope properties. This is actually a kind of an interesting photo. This is all parked up on the bike lanes. So they reference the bike lanes that folks are going to be using, completely parked up on a pretty regular basis. Okay, the next photo, this is also Nielsen Street, looking north. We do have to contend quite regularly with bus parking in our neighborhood. So that often takes up more than one regular parking space, and that's why I included that in there. It is perhaps blocking an area for access. I don't think it's an entrance, but it is an area for handicapped. Yeah. This photo is actually, I believe, on George Street, the final one here, and you can see that in this case, this is a photo of a vehicle actually parked up on the sidewalk, and then a vehicle that is blocking a driveway.
Thank you.
Sure.
So before we reviewed the photographs, I was going to ask you about the dates that the applicant did their walkthrough and assessment of available parking between the hours of 10 and 11 p.m. on May 9th and then the following year, July 9th.
Right.
And those dates have some significance to you?
Well, those are dates that are off the Rutgers calendar. So May 9th was actually the day I had to get my grades in for Rutgers classes. Students were out of school as of May 4th. Graduation is the 13th. Students weren't in this area. That's significant to me because we have significant student traffic and significant student parking in our neighborhood. So the traffic report that they referenced, or that the study that they did not take into account the significant, as we all know, we're New Brunswick residents, the significant student impact on our neighborhoods.
So the photographs that you reviewed here, do they have more or less an indication of problems that would be exacerbated by the presence of students?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure that she would be qualified to opine on that. She's
Well,
qualified as an expert in traffic.
let me just say I have a master's in city and regional planning from Rutgers. I have a doctorate in urban planning and policy development. My master's was in transportation planning.
You're proffering her as an expert? We can go through her credentials.
I don't know if you want to do that, but yeah.
Well, I don't know that it's necessary, but I think it certainly goes to the weight of her factual testimony and her ability to discuss the parking issues around 54 Hazard Street.
Counsel, she's been proffered as a fact witness. I mean, I can certainly, if you want to qualify her as an expert, then she can certainly opine on those areas that experts normally touch upon, but as a fact witness, I believe she's clearly outside of the purview or the scope of her expertise at this point.
Well, I think she's offered sufficient testimony regarding the photographs that she took and the indication of all the traffic parking violations that are included in those. But I thank you for the opportunity to have her expert testimony offered. Thank you. Sure.
Well, I haven't offered it.
The opportunity to have her expert testimony offered, yeah.
It's up to the board to decide whether to expect her as an
Absolutely.
expert, not to me.
Well, thank you. That's
Yeah, we get what's going on. Any other member of the professional board have any questions for this witness? Any member of the board? I have a question. She had an apartment building, right? How many apartments are in your building?
20 units.
How many parking spaces do you have for your on site? Do you have for your
So the
apartments?
building was built in 1928 at a time when no parking provisions were made. So we have only on-street parking as an opportunity for us.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not familiar with the area enough to know whether parking permits are required.
I do not believe so down there.
No?
No residential. No. Your next witness?
If I may, I'd like to call the applicant's traffic expert. I just have a few questions for him.
Just restate your name.
Seckler, S-E-C-K-L-E-R, and I understand I'm still on the road.
Thank you.
Just a few quick questions. I was curious to know if the Rutgers academic schedule played any part in the decision to take those parking assessments when they were taken.
No, I believe, honestly, they were probably based on the fact that our client was likely looking to submit something, and they contacted us, and we ran out there at the next available night or one of the nights of that week. It's likely why we selected those nights. I know ideally, specifically the July 9th, we typically don't do counts in the summer, but obviously, if we waited until school got back in session, we would still be waiting today for July 2019. We'd still be without that data point.
Was there any discussion about doing a count while school's in session?
I don't believe there was. I was on every single phone call with the client, but from my understanding, I don't believe there was a specific request to avoid or to include the school session.
That's all I had. Thank you.
Okay, that's it.
I I have no further witnesses.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else from the public have any questions or comments? I see.
State your name, sorry, last name.
Charles Cradwell, K-R-A-T-O-V-I.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
You may proceed.
Good evening, members of the board. Charles Cradwell. I'm a resident, editor of New Brunswick today. I'm very familiar with the area. I do want to start by just thanking the applicant for a very thorough presentation and also thanking the objectors and Ms. Fennick for her testimony. I thought it helped, and I do want to vouch for the fact that it's not really easy to find parking in that area, even in the summer. But of course, like most areas in New Brunswick, the demand is highest when Rutgers is in session. And I just had a few questions I wanted to ask. This set of plans, this application, was this submitted to the Environmental Commission?
I believe I gave these to Manny Castaneda to relay to the Environmental Commission.
Okay. And how about the Historical Association?
I did not
City
relay
Historical.
anything to the Historical Association.
Okay. Mr. McDonough's testimony was very thorough. He mentioned that this is going to be done through the R6 zone and not the redevelopment overlay. And he mentioned something about it doesn't stack up to do it through the redevelopment overlay. Can I hear a little bit more about why doesn't it stack up? Why was this choice made to do this through the R6 zone instead of the redevelopment zone?
Sure, the way the redevelopment,
Just restate the name.
for the record, John McDonough, the way the redevelopment plan is structured, it's an overlay. If the applicant does not comply with the overlay, it trips back to the R6 zoning designation, and that's the mechanism why.
I see, but so why isn't it compatible with
okay.
the redevelopment zone?
So this is the zoning allows, and the redevelopment plan allows for 4 stories, and this is a 5-story building. Even though I said that's a semantic issue because
It's
there's the word habitable.
But so that's the only reason is the height is it's too tall for the redevelopment.
And the floor area, yes. There are 2 controls that are related in the redevelopment plan. The application does not stack up.
Okay. Well, I've stated on the record at the Housing Authority, I do have some concerns about the developer's desire to pursue a tax exemption, long-term tax exemption for 30 years from the city government, and I just encourage them to do something for our school system if they want to secure that type of relief from the burden that every other taxpayer in the city has to support our schools. And this building, I hear 53 families, there's inevitably going to be some children. It's going to have an impact on the school system. So I would just suggest respectfully to the applicant that they send someone to the next city council meeting where that ordinance is going to be heard, and that they offer to do something for the schools and make a contribution for those 30 years that they'll be hoping to get out from that burden. And aside from that, those are my only comments. I do share the concerns about parking, but I am pleased to see a plan for affordable housing, and I do have some experience with this developer. They've obviously done projects here, and I know people who live in those projects, and I walk through those areas on a regular basis, and I hope that they can live up to the standard that they've set over the past decade or so, or 2 decades of working in the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other member of the public have any questions or comments? Seeing none, the public portion is closed. Board discussion.
I feel kind of torn. We obviously need affordable housing in New Brunswick, and we all know that parking is an issue. But some of the things that were brought up in objection, even though there may be 101 bedrooms in the building, that doesn't mean that every building is going to be, every bedroom is going to be occupied by a driver. Obviously, in 2- and 3-bedroom units, there will most likely be some children. So I don't think that we can use that as a big weight to say that there's going to be that many more drivers. And the illegal parking of 12 cars in that current lot, that is something that the city really needs to address in terms of ensuring that drivers are not parking where they shouldn't be parking.
like if it was a private lot, it would have to be the
Okay.
ownership would have to privately enforce it, not the city unless they gave them a Title 39.
Well, with a
Yeah.
gated parking garage, that won't be an issue any
Correct.
longer.
Anyone else have any questions? Board professionals have anything? Oh, you want to come up and give a final statement?
We would. Do you
Sure.
mind if we allow the opportunity to redirect and provide some counter testimony?
And if you do, then we do have to open it back up to the vote.
Yes, we understand that.
Okay. Please come forward.
I just actually, very quickly, I was wondering if I can ask a question of the client.
Please state your name again.
Lee Klein.
I just remember you saw it.
Mr. Klein, you provided testimony relating to the census data and how many cars are associated among the census data. It totaled about 59 cars, depending on 111 bedrooms. And my question.
No, it was, I did it times 53 units.
Okay, so but you had 59 cars, and that was based off your extrapolation of the census data, how many cars per bedroom?
No, I'm sorry, it was automobile ownership in the New Brunswick 08901 zip code from census.gov. 43.6% of the households own one vehicle,
Okay.
19.5% own two, and 7.8% own three or more, and I assume 3.5. So when I do, if there's 53 households here, I did 43% of those households times one is 23. 19.5% of those households times two is 21. And then 7.8% of those households would have 3.5 cars, that's 15. Add them up, you get 59.
So out of the census data, how much of that extrapolates affordable households?
I don't know. That was just the overall numbers similar to the numbers that your traffic expert used.
So based on that data, there's going to be 15, there's an estimate of 15 households that are going to have 3 cars parking in this 100% affordable housing project.
No,
Basing off the data.
no, 7.8% of the 53 households will have on average 3.5 vehicles.
Agreed. Okay,
Yeah.
so 7.5 of each
7.
units will have 3 or more cars.
Correct.
Out of this affordable housing.
Correct.
Project. That's your testimony. All right. And then in addition, so with the data of the, please clarify this is automobile ownership among low-income family residents, and it said something about 20%, something about April 9, 2008 report that had 20% of low and moderate housing households.
What it was is, it was information from governing.com, an article that I quoted from April 9th, 2018. It looked at 2006 and 2016. In 2006, 22% of adults living in poverty had access to no vehicles. And then that went down to 20% of adults living in poverty in 2016 had access to no vehicles. I'm just showing that changed.
That there is a trend in your argument, but is that just affordable housing units, households throughout the state, or is this related to urban?
I think it's a national statistic of low income, people living in poverty, adults in poverty.
Sure, and it doesn't extrapolate urban areas with access to mass transit versus suburban areas, it's just any of low and moderate income households.
I believe so.
Okay. I have no further questions, thank you very much, I appreciate it. And if I could just ask one question of Ms. Pinnock. I'm not gonna let you talk. I'm trying to make this quick, I know you guys want this to be done. I have exactly one question.
Please say your name.
Heather Bennett.
Just remind her that you're still on the.
Ms. Pinnock, thank you very much for the photos. I just wanted to ask you, what time of day were those photos taken?
Yeah, they were taken probably between 11:30 and 12:30.
11:30 and 12:30, and then I'm sorry, just
In the
one-
morning.
Okay.
Mostly was all through.
And then 11:30 a.m. and 12:30 p.m. And just one follow-up. Did you take any more updated photos?
I am now taking photos all the time.
Okay.
Yeah, and they rival what was shown. I didn't expect you to show those photos today. I could have given you even worse pictures. So,
I appreciate it. Thank you very much. All right, now, I'd like to call up Matt Sackler for
Matthew Seckler, for the record. I understand I'm still under oath, and I'll keep it brief. Just a couple points. One, as Mr. Klein had mentioned, while there may be a trend towards maybe less households of low income with 0 vehicles, he still stated that about a fifth of them do not have vehicles. That includes, again, as per his testimony, can be a mix of urban and suburban or rural sites. And I did find the FHWA put out a transportation brief in 2014 titled Mobility Challenges for Households in Poverty, just so that people could understand what my point was, which was the fact that people in poverty tend to have less vehicle ownership. People at or below the poverty line, this is based on the National Household Travel Survey of 2009. At or below the poverty line, 22% of households have 0 cars, 70% of households have 0 or 1 cars. This was done in a bar chart, so it could be like a plus or minus a couple percent there, just because it's difficult to read across the bar chart. Above the poverty line, but less than $100,000 household income, 4% have 0 cars, and 38% have 0 or 1. So you're talking about a drop from 22% with 0 cars to 4% with 0 cars as you go above the poverty line, but less than $100,000 as income. And that 0 to 1 cars goes from 70% to 38%. When you go above $100,000 of income, your amount of households with 0 cars is about 1 to 2%, and households with 0 or 1 cars goes to 10%. So again, at or below the poverty line, 22% 0 cars, above 100,000, about 1 to 2%. 70% of households at or below the poverty line have 0 or 1 cars, versus above $100,000 income, between about 10%. So again, you see definitive trend, even though it may be changing over time, a definitive trend, less income, less car ownership. And I do think that perhaps the change maybe over time is what we've seen in terms of gentrification displacement of the urban poor or urban less affluent and being moved out to perhaps areas that have less transit and less ability to commute via transportation. Whereas this project here is being located in an area where there is transportation. So I do think that this is the type of development that I think is more encouraging from an affordable housing standpoint, because it does allow for connection to jobs, retail, and entertainment in a close proximity to transit. So I do think that, again, that in looking at specifically this location, and looking at the national averages, there's a clear look at the fact you just can't take a national number and throw it here. You can't just take a from the book ITE number and throw it here, because this is an affordable housing in an urban environment. So I think that is just, in summary, what we're looking for in terms of this development.
Thank you. Any other testimony? All right, at this time, I'll reopen it up to the public. Does anyone from the public have any more comments or concerns, questions? Seeing none, I'm going to close it. Board have any more discussion?
Mr. Chairman, if the board acts on this application, I recommend the following items as conditions of approval. Compliance with the terms of the DNR engineering report dated July 17th, 2019. Submission of all necessary easements and cross-access agreements for review and approval by the board attorney and city engineer. Payment of a site performance bond in an amount reviewed and approved by the city engineer. Submission of a site inspection escrow deposit for engineering inspection fees in an amount calculated pursuant to city ordinance. Payment of all water and sewer connection fees. Issuance of a road opening permit. Compliance with the terms of the Bignell planning report dated August 6th, 2019. Payment of a redeveloper fee if applicable to the city of New Brunswick. Mandatory monetary contribution to the city's tree preservation trust fund in an amount to be determined by the TAC. Planning escrow funded for all anticipated post-approval reviews. Payment of all outstanding taxes and or water or sewer fees. Middlesex County Planning Board approval or waiver. Freehold Soil Conservation District approval or waiver. Submitted engineering site plan to comply with any changes required by the planning or engineering memos or plan amendments offered at the hearing. All All utilities and other site improvements to be maintained by the applicant at their sole expense. All on-site utilities to be constructed underground. All temporary encroachments into the public right-of-way shall require city council approval. All construction staging shall be done on-site unless an encroachment allowing into the public right-of-way is approved by the city council. Streets shall be kept clean of sediment and debris. The applicant shall cause the streets to be cleaned if directed to do so by the Director of Public Works. Tracking pads shall be installed at all construction exits. Replacement of any damaged streets, curbs, or sidewalks as per the direction of the city engineer. Variances are for use, D1, FAR, height, bulk variances for building height, number of stories, front yard setback, building coverage, impervious coverage, parking, lot area, lot width. And there's no side variance.
Would only add two additional. One would be the applicant sign a Title 39 enforcement authorization, and that the applicant would agree to voluntarily waive the right of any of its occupants to obtain on-street parking permits should they become available.
But with do they really need to get the Title 39 due to the fact that it's going to be gated and enclosed gates are going to go up and down?
I would imagine that they might be concerned with other people parking in their parking lot if there's such a parking problem in that area.
Yeah, but I believe the testimony was that there's going to be a gate coming up and down.
I understand. Just
to be in case. Okay.
Just in case.
Okay. Are they agreeable?
We agree.
Okay. Do I have a motion from the board?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Who's the second?
Alan Ascona?
Yes.
Doug Sheehan?
Yes.
Mike Feldman?
Yes.
John Zimmerman?
Yes.
Peg Chester?
Yes.
John Cox?
Yes. Congratulations. Martin? Do you have
Mr. Chairman, if the board is so inclined, I do have a resolution of approval prepared, if I could read that into the record. The board can consider that if they wish to adopt that for this evening on this application. This is application Z 2017-22, which is Stirlingside Urban Renewal LLC. Whereas Stirlingside Urban Renewal LLC, 185 Dartmouth Street, Boston, Massachusetts, 02116, applicant seeks approval for its preliminary and final site plan use and variance application to construct a multifamily residential development at 50 Nelson Street in Brunswick. Whereas the applicant requests approval to develop the two lots as a multifamily residential development, resulting in a request for approval of certain variances to it: use, minimum lot area, minimum lot width, minimum front setback, maximum building height, maximum floor area ratio, maximum building coverage, maximum impervious coverage, lot coverage, and minimum off-street parking spaces. Whereas the applicants request the City of New Brunswick Zoning Board of Adjustment grant approval of its preliminary and final site plan, use, and variance application to permit the construction of a 5-story mid-rise, 100% affordable housing unit residential structure, 4 stories, and this is in parenthetical, 4 stories over first floor or first story parking, close parenthetical, lots 1.01 and 1.02 in block 122 of the City of New Brunswick tax map, open parenthetical, subject site, close parenthetical, and an amendment to the approval granted under PB-2003-09 for the Lord Sterling Senior Residential Housing Development Project, parenthetical, block 122, lot 1.01, close parenthetical, where 25 spaces were allocated for use under PB 2003-09, and this application seeks to reduce the number of off-street parking spaces allocated for use by Lord Sterling Senior Residential Housing Project to 3 spaces at lot 1.01 in block 122 of the City of New Brunswick tax map, open parenthetical, Lord Stirlingside, close parenthetical, upon property more commonly known as 50 Nielsen Street in New Brunswick, New Jersey, which is the subject site. The hearing was held by the Zoning Board of Adjustment on August 26, 2019, at which time the applicant was represented by John Nee, Esquire, and evidence was presented in testimony of Sufain El Masi, professional engineer, Runa Mehta, representative of the applicant, Joaquin Buzas, professional architect, Matthew Steckler, traffic engineer, and John McDonald, licensed professional planner. live testimony and certain documents, including exhibits A1 through A7. In support of the application presented by the applicant and accepted and duly considered by the board, whereas the staff and professionals of the zoning board have been duly sworn and provided comments, testimony under oath, and whereas members of the public in attendance were given an opportunity to comment and or provide testimony, specifically objector's attorney. Objector's attorney Blake C. With Esquire and traffic engineer L.D. Klein, accepted as an expert by this board, and Heather Fennick, accepted as a fact witness and a member of the Middlesex Apartments LLC, the objector in this matter. Whereas 01, consisting of 8 photographs, was accepted by the board as an exhibit offered by the objector. The Zoning Board of Adjustment has made the following findings and determinations. 1, the board relies on the reports and testimony of its professionals, which it finds to be credible in consideration of this application. 2, board members rely on their knowledge of the subject site and the surrounding areas. 3, the subject property is located in the R6 multifamily zone and the Lower George Street redevelopment area. 4, the proposed site currently consists of 2 lots, one of which is being used for surface parking, lot 1.01, the other being vacant, lot 1.02. Applicant proposes to demolish the surface parking facility and construct the proposed multifamily mid-rise residential facility. Paragraph 5, applicant seeks certain variances to Whitman use variance, minimum lot area, minimum lot width, minimum front setback, maximum building height, maximum floor area ratio, maximum building coverage, maximum lot impervious coverage, and minimum off-street parking. 6, applicant proposes to consolidate the 2 lots into one single tax lot, upon which it is proposed that the applicant make the proposed improvements consistent with the testimony, plans, and documents submitted to and considered by the board. 7, applicant proposes to reduce the number of off-street parking spaces allocated for use by the adjacent Lord Sterling Senior Residential Housing Project, lot 1.01, block 122, from 25 to 3 spaces. 8, board finds that the proposed development comprised of 100% affordable housing units is inherently beneficial and serves the public good, thus presumptively satisfying the positive criteria as outlined under SMART SMR versus Fair Lawn Board of Adjustment, omitting the site, and SICA versus Board of Adjustment of the Township of Wall, also omitting the citation. The board accepts the testimony of the applicant's planning professional and further finds that the 4-pronged SICA test has been satisfied by applicant. Specifically, the board finds that the applicant has 1, identified the public interest at stake, to wit, affordable housing being a paramount public interest. 2, identified the potential detrimental effects. Proposed development is not a substantial departure from zone plan. Intensity of use is within the capacity of the site, and the use is compatible with the residential character of the surrounding areas. 3, identified reasonable conditions that may mitigate the impact of the development. Stormwater management has been proposed. The parking management plan has been proposed. And 4, concluded that on balance, the public benefit substantially outweighs the mitigating impacts. Paragraph 11, the board finds that the applicant has met its burden and demonstrated that the site can accommodate the proposed development and that the positive criteria outweighs the negative criteria in assessing the approval of the D4 and D6 relief sought by the applicant. 12, specifically, the board finds that the statutory test for floor area ratio and heights relief sought by the applicant are interrelated, that the positive criteria, added mass providing, and this is in parenthetical, added mass provides more affordable housing units, is more aesthetically appealing, and the site is visually improved, substantially outweighs the negative criteria, that the proposed massing of this infill development is in harmony with the immediately surrounding, and the massing can be adequately parked, screened, and served by utilities, and the added massing does not create negative shadows or block scenic view sheds. Paragraph 13, the board finds the applicant has demonstrated the grant of the requested use variance relief for the proposed development will carry out the purposes of zoning, specifically NJSA 40:55D2 subparagraphs A, G, I, and M, such reasons specifically found by the board to promote the general purposes of zoning as required under Medici. Paragraph 14, the board finds the applicant has demonstrated the proposed development of the property and that the variances requested can be granted without substantial detriment to public good, and that the proposed development is consistent with the other structures, residences in the immediate area. Paragraph 15, the board finds that the applicant has made a showing that the proposed development and the accompanying variances can be granted under the flexible C2 standard of municipal land use law. Paragraph 16 specifically, the board finds that the substantial benefits of granting the bulk variances sought by the applicant would be necessary to effectuate this project. Paragraph 17, the board additionally finds that the detriments, if any, of granting the bulk variances are mitigated by landscaping and drainage improvements on the site. Further, the board finds that the parking supply will be sufficient to meet the demands of the proposed project. Paragraph 18, the board finds that in applying the balancing test of positive criteria, the benefits from the proposed development of the property as requested by the applicant outweigh the negative criteria and detriments, which the board specifically finds would be slight, if any. Paragraph 19, the board finds that the application for the requested variances can be granted without substantial detriment to the city's zone plan, master plan, or the public good. Paragraph 20, the board finds that the applicant has made of showing that the proposed development and company variances can be granted under the flexible C2 standard of the municipal land use law. The conditions that were provided by the board's planning professional, if you want me to repeat it, I can. That would comprise the remainder of the proposed resolution of approval. The resolution memorialization would be all that's left for the board to consider.
Did you have a question?
In that form.
Okay.
Mr. Urban, I really appreciate all that. I think there is just like, perhaps in paragraph 7 or 8, there was a reference to Lower Sterling having 3 parking spaces.
Yes.
We want it to be 5.
5.
Because 3 are going to be on-site, 2 off-site were already granted to Lower Sterling.
So there's a reference to the third whereas, and there is another reference to it in paragraph 7. So that would be changed from 3 proposed spaces to 5.
Yes.
But because the 2 spaces are off on the street, why would we have to put it into the resolution?
It's because that was part of our approval, that was part of the planning board approval, is that the bulk, like 2 out of the 25, 23 were on-site, or off-site, I apologize, off-street. 2 were on the street. So we're trying to preserve those 2 that are on the street, and we're going to provide 3 within Stirlingside. So it's a total of 5. We just want the total to be 5, not 3.
Yeah, I just don't see how anybody could reserve 2 spaces on the street. It's a public street, it's non-public, so it's free for all, it's free. Yeah, so I don't know if we could put that really into the record because
it would have to be 3. You're providing 3 spaces on site.
We are providing 3 spaces.
Are you providing the additional 2 on site?
That was, yeah, that's fine.
The relief requested, as far as I know, was for 3 on site.
That is correct. That is
You
accurate.
can certainly provide 5, and I can change that.
We'll do that. Thank
Okay,
you.
so no change.
No
It's
change.
3.
Thank you.
If the board is satisfied with the form of the resolution, then a motion to accept would be appropriate.
Motion to accept the memorialization as
I'll make a motion to accept.
I'll second. Evelyn Escona?
Yes.
Doug Sheehan?
yes.
Mike Baldwin?
Yes.
John Zimmerman?
Yes.
Ed Chester?
Yes.
John Cox?
Yes.